This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Mr. Tim Sullivan from Sonder Sites. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Mate, you told me an
Yeah.
amazing story, and before we get into the nitty-gritty of what you do, how you do it, why you do it, just give us the short version of how you even found me, because you actually reached out to me and said, hey, look, I think we would have a great conversation on the podcast, and then we teed this up, and here we are. But how did you even, because you said, it broke my heart, but you said I hadn't even heard of this guy, Jason Greenwood, before this situation happened.
I am based in Australia, so like obviously you're famous everywhere in the world. But I hadn't come across you, and I was doing some deep research into marketing myself and promoting myself and trying to get my SaaS product out into the world. And I was talking to ChatGPT. I was 4 hours deep, and it said out of all the things it gave me, you were number 2 or number 3 of the things I had to do. I had to talk to Jason, because if you want to talk to someone who has any insight or has reach in the e-commerce space, he is one of the biggest movers in the space. So I was like, wow, I'm gonna try and find this guy and try and reach out. And you were so accommodating, and yeah, here we are. But yeah, using ChatGPT to find insights and gaps in the market so you can actually get some reach is, yeah, that was how I found you. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Look at that. Look, my GEO must be working. Not that I'm doing anything intentional, but I think it's interesting because I find that even in the responses that I get from ChatGPT, it's usually, especially if it's in relation to people or topics where there's people involved, that the longer the person has been around, so to speak, the more content if they've been around for 10 years producing content, for example, they'll usually put that person forward, even if other people, more current people are in the list, they oftentimes are a little bit further down the list. And it feels like ChatGPT, but just based purely on usage, because I've redirected all my web queries. I've got an app because I use Brave the browser. I've got an app that redirects all my web queries to ChatGPT. So I don't use Google anymore. I use ChatGPT for everything. And so I've gotten a sense how it works. And it definitely feels that authority is oftentimes driven not just by breadth and depth of content, but how far back can it find content related to you, or how far back can it find a record of you on the internet? And it seems to give some credence or some weight the longer you've been in the game.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It also might have been the way that I prompted it and asked, this is where I am, like what's achievable, like, because maybe what like Gary V, reach out to Gary V, but then they might have looked at it and gone, that's not achievable, or you're not credible enough to get there. But however it works, I loved it, and here we are. But it's interesting because I talk to, obviously I build e-commerce stores for a living, and I always talk to different industries, and I work with a couple of different SEO companies, and I'm like saying to them, what are you guys scared of? Or where gaps? Like, where's the potential? And I'll put this out into the universe because I think everyone should know it. So I had a friend of mine reach out and say, Tim, I found the perfect app. I found the perfect app for Shopify, and I know where the gap is. And I was like, all right, tell me. And it was like, you have to call me. It was like 4 a.m. or something. I was like, this must be a pretty good app idea. And so his Google Gemini has come out. I can see how they're going to change the game, and it's all about schema. And I was like, okay. I'm like, all right, schema, tell me why. And there's all these people on Shopify, and none of them are doing their schema properly. And I was like, okay. I'm like, why is that so important? And he said, all these large language models are basing their search results on schema. And I was like, okay. So the idea is this: let's build a Shopify app that does schema really well for all these products, all these e-commerce stores, and then they'll help them rank. Because obviously every business is looking for ways to have an edge, right? And is it their email marketing? Is it using Klaviyo? Is it having a really fancy add to cart button? I don't know. What are they looking for that's going to help them get that sale or the conversion rate up? So schema, that's the thing. So for those out there listening, I would say build an amazing schema app. There's a couple on the Shopify app store, but yeah, maybe your schema is really good for ranking for who you are. I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe, but I also, what's interesting is with multimodal AI now, I find that in the past we had to have perfect text, we had to perfect everything for Google. It all had to be in nice organized tables. We had to have our attributes and our attribute values, and they all had to be in text, and they all had to be consistent. And we had to have all these technical SEO hygiene factors on our website for Google to even be able to index us, rank us, even be able to just for the web to know we existed. We had to tick off 50 hoops of minimal SEO optimization to even be found by Google or indexed by Google. and Search Console was a thing, and so you wanted to make sure you were in good graces with the Search Console and everything else. So you had the canonical links and right. But what I find now is so crazy is with multimodal AI, is the data can be really ugly and messy, and ChatGPT can still make something out of it. So I can upload an entire PDF. I've told this story actually on the podcast before, but I'll tell it again because many people won't have heard it. I was trying to buy a dirt bike, and I was on Facebook Marketplace is a second bike, and the person had put Kimball, but they hadn't picked a year. And I wasn't 100% sure what the year was. So I downloaded the image, I uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I said, what is this motorcycle? And it said, based on these 53 factors, it looks like it's this range of year, it's got this, and it's got this aftermarket part on it. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's very cool. That is very cool. It took this raw image, and it told me more than if I was in a bike shop, right? Talking to somebody who's an expert in the field. So it's very interesting. And I can upload a 100-page PDF to ChatGPT, and I could say, "Can you just give me a summary of this?" And it'll give me like a 2-paragraph summary of the entire bloody thing. And do you want to dive specifically into any one of these areas a little bit more, and I can give you a little bit more information? So, whilst it's admirable that schema is important, I think what's more interesting about large language models is the multimodal capabilities and the fact that the data doesn't have to be beautiful, and it can still parse things out of it in the same way as a human reading it would be able to parse really unique things out of it.
Yeah, even what you just said then, I will have a contract with a client, like a 50-page document, and they're like, can you do this and this? And I'll query it and say, can you check that contract to make sure this is not out of scope? And they'll go,
Yeah.
actually, this is out of scope. Yeah. I'll be like, I'll go back to the customer, where traditionally I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll do that. But now I'm like, better at my job. And then everyone's happy because keep within the scope. I find it fascinating. And I find it fascinating what you do as well. Talk to me more about the e-commerce edge, the listeners, and why do you do this? Because I know you're always asking your guest questions, but why do you keep doing this? 500 episodes. What drives you every day? Is
Well,
it you get kick out of meeting your mates?
you've obviously listened to an episode before, because normally right at the end of every episode, I ask my guests to ask me one question, any question they like, personal or professional. So I turn the microphone over to them at the very end. We're going to get it right out the front here. So maybe this is a new format for the podcast, which is ask that
Yep.
question at the beginning instead of the end. Look,
Yep.
that is a very good question. And look, I think there was a number of motivations to starting the podcast back in 2016. And frankly, everything that I do from a content perspective, from LinkedIn to Reddit to X and everything. But ultimately, what it came down to was Gary Vee. I got sick of Gary Vee kicking my ass just over a decade ago, and him saying basically, if you think you're a thought leader, well, you can't be a thought leader if you're not putting your thoughts out in the world for critique, right? And let the market decide whether your thoughts have value, whether your thoughts have merit, right? And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, fine, Gary Vee. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll start putting. And the other thing he said that has turned out to totally be true for me is that he said, when you start your content journey, you probably won't have any idea of what the breadth and depth of the good things that will come out of this journey for you. You will have no idea. You just have to trust the process, so to speak. And it's 100% true. I was telling you off air that I just recently, my wife and I have been traveling for a month, but on our way back, we came through Miami. And someone who I met through the industry ultimately ended up having them on my podcast as a guest. They live in Miami. He said, "Look, you got to come and stay with me on your way through Miami." We stayed at his house for 2 days, and he played. He was the most amazing tour guide for 2 days for me and my wife in Miami, and that all happened because of content and being in the industry and being known in the industry. And he's turned into what will be a lifelong friend. And so it's just super interesting. You may not always know what good things will come out of putting your neck out there, of overcoming any embarrassment you might have, or trying to figure out what your unique angle or spin or the kind of content pillars you want to speak to on a regular basis. And that will change over time, most likely. Like what you liked 10 years ago, it's going to be different 10 years from now. And so I feel like this was, it's like a TARDIS, right? You step in and it's much bigger than what it seems.
Yeah.
I feel like when I started the podcast, I didn't have my own business. I was working inside of a brand. It wasn't like I was doing it to make money. I was doing it because I loved it. And I was doing it because it was an education for me to have experts on my podcast that were experts on things I was not an expert in. So it was a form of education. I love human beings anyway. I'm super extrovert. I love having unique, interesting conversations. And this was a way to
Yeah.
do it that wasn't sleazy. Because if you slide into someone's DMs and you ask them, "Hey, look, you're in the same industry as me. Let's talk shop for 15 minutes and grab a virtual coffee," they think you're going to try to sell them something. And so this was a way to kind of legitimize wanting to have genuine conversations with people. And 500 episodes later, I'm finally there. Hopefully I'm accepted as somewhat legitimate now in the podcast space.
Have you ever, I don't know, maybe you've already been on it, but is there ever a chance of you and Gary Vee having a podcast together? Have you ever been on his podcast or
No,
could
no,
that happen?
funnily enough, I've never reached out to him, but maybe I should shoot my shot. Maybe I should slide into his DMs on Instagram and ask him, "Hey, Gary, would you wanna come on mine or I'll come on yours?"
Yeah, because that would be amazing. That would make sense. Why would he not talk to someone like you? That would be amazing to watch.
Close the loop.
Um, yeah, yeah, close the loop. There's loops just going around. Yes, yeah, that's awesome.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Well, so how the heck did you get into e-commerce? Like, what was the draw that I've been in this industry for 25 years, so I'm an old hand at this, but how did you
yeah.
get into this space? What drew you into it?
No one's ever asked me that question. My first job, I've always been in sales. My first job that I had was when I was 14 and 8 months, because that's the legal age to work in Australia for kids. So I got a
Yeah.
job, and my first job was selling TVs at a department store called Myer. And I
Mother
was
worked in
14.
Meijer. I've got family living in
Oh,
Australia. I
wow.
lived in New Zealand for almost 30 years. My
Okay.
mother worked in Meijer in the cosmetics department for 15 years. So I know Meijer very well.
There you go. So yeah, so you can picture it like a multi-level department store, 14, nearly 15, had to buy a suit. So I looked nice and I had no idea what I was doing, but it was my first job and it was like a summer, like a Christmas job. So outside of school, because I was only in year 9 or something. And they offered me a full-time job. So I had this opportunity to leave school and do that. And I was like, no. So I went back to school, but that was my first job in sales. And I learned really early on that you can't sell something unless you fully believe in it. And I thought that I had learned that lesson, but I won't tell you my whole life story, but essentially I had heaps of different sales jobs. I did door-to-door sales for a phone company. We knock on people's doors and try and get them to change their phone plan. That was really a real dangerous job. I worked at a radio station selling radio ads, and I learned I didn't believe in that. And that was like before web really took off. So like selling like $50,000 radio ads, someone would give me 50 grand and I'd get no results. And I'm like, I don't know. And then I even did car sales for a little bit, new car sales. And that was the worst
My
job of my
first
whole
job.
life.
My
That
first
was, oh, I don't know.
my first real job out of high school, I
Yeah.
worked selling cars for 9 months.
Okay. What car? I was selling Honda cars.
Mhm.
And it was the worst job I ever had purely because I'd come from radio where I had like freedom to go and meet people and sell and everything. I have full control over what I did, to going into this car dealership where there's like a pecking order where you have to wait until it's your turn. And then when you actually talk to a customer, they're like, I'll give you 50 grand for the car. And you're like, let me check with my manager. And they're like, 56. And then you go back and forth. And I was like, it was the worst customer experience ever. And it was at the time when Tesla was coming out.
Yes.
Tesla had just come out and they had a fixed price online. I was like, that's a way better way of selling. It's like the Apple model as well. Like, this is the price. We're premium. If you want it, you buy it. If you don't, there's none of this negotiating, and it's really yucky. And I hated it. So then I left that, and I'll give you this quick story because it's interesting. But essentially, I had this personal training business where we put personal trainers into private schools, and I had all these personal trainers. And I took like a cut, so I charged the school $80 an hour, and I paid the personal trainer $40 an hour, and I keep the middle bit. But it's a camping trip with my mates, and I fell off a cliff. Sounds weird, but I fell off a cliff, and as I was falling into the water, all in my head, all I could think about was I didn't get to say goodbye to my partner and my dog, and also that I never did web design for a living. And obviously I survived that fall. It was a massive fall. It was like 10 meters as well. It was into a river. But when I got back from that camping trip, I said to my wife, I said, I'm going to quit doing personal training. I'm going to sell it. I'm going to do web design. And she's like, why? I'm like, I do it every night anyway for free. I'm like, I build websites for free, but I just want to do it as a job. So I called my dad and I said, do you know anyone who works in the website space? He's an electrician. And he's one of my good friends, runs one of the best agencies in Melbourne. I can get an intro. His name was Marty. He runs an agency called Luminary, which is one of Australia's oldest digital agencies. And he's yeah, send me a resume and you can come in for a meeting. So I got in the door, and on my resume, it's one of the things that said on there was I was networking. So they just assumed that I was really good at IT and like servers and routers and all that kind of
Oh,
stuff. And I
not
was in
human
the
networking.
so I'm in the meeting in this like really fancy boardroom in the middle of the city, and the CEO's there, and the guy who's like head of IT is there, and he's like, all right, so tell me about your experience with networking. And I was like, yeah, I love it. Get into a room, start getting around, talking to people. And he's, what? And he like looked at me and he's like, why the fuck did you bring this guy here? What's this guy doing here? So Marty's is what other skills have you got? And I'm like, I don't know, custom. So he put me in this really entry level job, but I was in an agency and I got to experience working in a big agency, and I'd built heaps of e-commerce stores before I got there, just for fun, for like friends and stuff. And then, so I was working in this big agency, and their minimum cost was 100 grand for a website. I was working in the customer service area, doing like support tickets, DNS, all that kind of stuff. And all these people would call and they're like, I've got 50 grand, I've got 10 grand, I've got 2 grand. And I'd have to say no to them. And then I just said to the CEO one day, I said, can I like take these clients on outside of work? And he said, sure. So I did them outside of work, and I got to a point where I was just making more money on the weekends than I'm making at my job. So I decided to take the leap and back myself. And I just found out at the time, I found out I was about to have a kid. So I was like, I'm just going to do it. And my wife fully backed me, and I had no clients. I had a couple of really small clients, but I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to find a way to make it happen because I just love it. I love e-commerce. I love helping people. I love like finding ways for people to make more money. And I used my door-to-door salesman skills and literally went down the street knocking on doors. And there was this beer shop called Purvis Beer. And I knew they had a really good product. They imported international beers. It was before craft beer really blew up in Australia. It was already big in America. They had really good prices. And I was like, these guys, they used to Shopify store and an Instagram page and they'll blow up. And it took me 5 visits. So every time I went there, I bought beer. And I was like, Craig, you need,
Like,
let me
cost
do
me something now.
yeah, I'm like, Craig's there. And I was like, let me do a proposal. And after the 5th visit, he was like, all right, just send me something. So I made a proposal, did a website for him, cost him 8.5 grand Australian. So it's 5 grand US. I built him a whole e-commerce store. I was there for months taking photos of every single beer. I set up his Instagram, and the end result was he gave me $8,600. I spent 2 months of my time, and he went from 30,000 a year online. And then when we launched it in his first month, he did 50 grand online in 1 month. So his whole year was 30 to 50. And then based off that, obviously that gave me a massive amount of confidence. I was like, I'm like a fairy godmother. I can do this for everyone. And Craig was like, you've just 10x my business. I'm going to hire everyone. I'm going to do it. And this is before COVID and everything. He just blew up. And now I took that story and I took it to all these other big people. And I've just been doing that ever since. So building e-commerce stores by myself. And then I worked with some developers, and now I've just been growing ever since. And I did a lot of mum and pop stores because they had similar issues. And that's how I got into the e-commerce space. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Man, I love that. I
Yeah.
love a good story, and that's such a true blue Aussie story. I like that. Going into the botlow down the road 5 times, pestering this guy. He probably just told you to give him a proposal to get you off his back, and then he was like, "Actually, I think this has legs." And then look, you blew up his business, and here we are. I love that. I love the fact that you backed yourself. I love the fact that you were like, "No, I'm going boots and all, jumping into this." I absolutely love it.
You have to.
It's
Yeah.
the I think, what is it they say down in ANZ? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which I've never really understood because I don't really know how you can do that when you're standing in your boots. But anyways, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I really like that story. And I love the tenacity. I love the vision that you could actually see how you could help customers even before you did. And you were like, okay, I'm going to sprinkle my fairy dust on top of these businesses. And it's going to be like fertilizer for these businesses. And they're going to go through the roof. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, my wife has a very different brain to me, but you get too emotionally attached to your customers because when I work with someone, I just pretend it's my business.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is my business, what I do. And it's very hard to put yourself in the mindset of a business owner because it is very emotional. It's your whole heart and everything and soul on the line. But if you do that, you get a superpower and you think about it all the time and you're like, oh, I wonder if they did this. And then if a business owner can sense that, and they can feel your hunger and your energy and like your craziness. Some business owners can't handle it. Some business owners are like, that's not for me. But other ones are like, yes, let's go. Let's rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
But
Yeah, I
yeah,
was gonna say.
taking that leap, I'm super passionate about. If I find someone else who's thinking about leaving a full-time safe job and working for themselves, I'll drop everything to help them out. I'll do whatever I can to help them out. I even made what do you call it, a free course, and I've got it on Udemy somewhere. It's got like 1,000 students, and it's about taking the leap. I call it "Take the Leap," and it's like for people who are like, I'm not sure if I should work for myself or work for someone else. And I talk about everyone works for someone because it's safe, right? But it's not safe at all. You're not in charge of your future. You don't know what's coming. They could fire you. Maybe you get a wage, and maybe you get paid to go to the toilet, but it's not ultimate freedom, right? And most people don't do it because they're actually scared if they do it and they fail, then they're actually a failure. But you got to put yourself in the fire and then see what comes out. Like you got to actually, like you said, with putting your thoughts out into the world, you got to put yourself out there to get that feedback. But I'm super passionate about that. If someone's, I'm going to work for myself, I'll give them every tool I can. I did it yesterday for someone who's, I'm going to work for myself. I'm like, what do you need? Like, let's
How
go.
can I help?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
look, I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that, and I'm much the same in the sense that I feel blessed for this industry has given me a life that is beyond my wildest dreams over the last 25 years, and now I pay cash for our house and no mortgage and get to travel the world seeing cool clients and
Oh,
cool places, and it's just it's wild. It's actually wild how well this industry has treated me. It's not like I haven't put effort in. I have. Certainly, I feel like I've got, in many respects, more out of it than I put into it, and it's just I feel super blessed, and I try to send the ladder back down again. And the podcast is one of the ways I try to do that. Is I try to put content out there that's inspiring and aspirational for people that they feel like, oh, this actually is achievable. This is something I can do. This is something I can learn. You don't just have to be born with it. You can actually learn these skills. You can learn the tactics, you can learn the strategies, you can learn the tool sets. It's all learnable, right? Unless you've got some sort of severe learning disability of some description, you can learn all these things. Like none of us are that special. Like sure, there's some geniuses in our industry, but for the most part, we're pretty average individuals doing some pretty supernatural feeling things at times, and it feels super exciting to be part of. And for the most part, I haven't found too many people in our industry that aren't willing to help you. And if you're willing to, you got to put yourself out there and you got to ask. But if you do that, if you ask the question, very few people are going to go, nah, bugger off, mate. Sorry, can't help you. 9 times out of 10, people are willing to bend over backwards to help you get where you're trying to get to because it makes them feel good too, right? It's that whole, that whole reciprocity thing. It makes them feel good inside.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm not saying, yeah, I'm fully for that. It's a selfish thing as well. I'm going to feel great, like helping you out. And like, it's almost like why I do the e-commerce stuff. It's look what I can do for you. Look what I did. It's that kind of thing as well, but everyone benefits. Yeah, no, I totally get that. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
virtuous cycle. Listen, and you have made more recently, you have made, as I understand it, and again, we've never worked together before, so I kind of have to go by what's on the tin. It
Yeah.
feels like you have more recently made a pivot in two different unique directions. One is doubling down on B2B on Shopify, which is such a new, even for Shopify, it's relatively new that they've paid any attention to B2B at all. They've had their wholesale storefront for a long time, but that was complete rubbish. And I don't know anybody that used it. And then, of course, they came out with B2B on Shopify Plus, and they're taking it a whole lot more seriously. They're putting a lot more money into it. They're putting a lot more marketing into it. And they feel like they're getting a lot more serious around it, although the latest additions maybe not, but we'll see. But that's the first thing. And then the second thing is you've also built a SaaS app. And tell me what was the evolution to decide, hey, cool, I've been working with SMBs and I've been working with lots of D2Cs and B2Cs, but I see a huge opportunity in the B2B world on Shopify. And secondarily, when did you decide to productize something and go to market with a product?
Yeah, cool. Let's talk about the SaaS products. So we'll talk about both of those things. But so, yeah, it was like when I had the realization around SaaS products, I was like, it's been in front of me all along. And I was just like, why didn't I think about this earlier? You're so stupid, Tim. What the hell? What the hell, mate? So I was like, all right, I left working for someone full time to go work for myself. And I was like, yep, that's a great jump. And then I was like, looking at all the different SaaS models, I'm like, oh yeah, you can build something once, get a recurring income, and then you're like set for life and you can do other stuff, right? And I was like, everyone kind of thinks that, but then they don't really think about it. I don't think most people think about it because it's a very different way of thinking, right? I was like, we actually solved the problem first, and then the SaaS idea came second. So I had all these Shopify stores, some like Shopify Plus, and a lot of them had retail stores. So they had bricks and mortars, and then a lot of them were sending emails. So in Australia, it's a worldwide application, but it's called Lightspeed, and a lot of stores use it. Yeah, POS. So a lot of Shopify stores use it. And so they have Lightspeed for their inventory, for taking credit card payments, and it'll look something like this in their store, bang, take on the credit card, and then talks to their Shopify store, works beautifully. And then they want to send emails to everyone, so they use Klaviyo, or as I always like to call it, Klaviyo, because it sounds fancier. But they use Klaviyo for their email marketing, and everything's beautiful. And the store owners were like, oh, obviously they all sync to each other and they work beautifully. but no. So Lightspeed doesn't talk to Klaviyo. And so if you do any research, you'll find there's an integration, but it's for their R series. When Vend purchased Lightspeed or Lightspeed purchased whatever it was, when they became the same thing, there's no integration between Lightspeed Retail X, which is what most Shopify store owners use. So I had this one store in Melbourne, skateboard shop, snowboard shop, and he's like, Tim, I need this. And I'm like, all right. So we spent some time and we built it for him. And then we just synchronize customers. So any of these in-store customers, you can email them from his Klaviyo flows. And I was like, yep, cool, done. And then 6 months go past. And then I had another customer and they're like, we need this thing. And I was like, oh, we did that for another customer already. We can just do that for you as well for free. Just do it. So start syncing it. And then there was like, man, if we're going to do this for more people, we might as well make some kind of dashboard or something. And I was like, I don't know. I'll Google and see what kind of things are out there. I saw this forum and there's always people asking about it. And I'm like, okay, there's heaps of people that need this issue. But I'm like, surely Lightspeed or Klaviyo will bring out an integration. There's no point in me pushing it because these companies would just bring that out. So I reached out to Klaviyo and Lightspeed and they're like, nah, we're not going to build it. We tell people we're going to build it, but we're not building it. It's in the, we tell people it's in the pipeline. And I'm like, okay. And for any of those Lightspeed or Klaviyo people watching this, I'm sorry, but that's what you said.
Yeah.
I'm like, and even in the forum, it's in our pipeline, we're working on it. So I'm like, okay, how about we just build it and we'll put it out there and we'll see if we get anyone signing up. We did, and we had 20 people sign up, and I did it for $15 a month or something, like some like small number. So American, that's $10 a month. And then they all wanted customizations and feedback, and I was spending a bit of time on it. And then Klaviyo started sending me leads, and I was like, yeah, I'm actually going to make this into an actual product. So I made a website, we built a forum dashboard, and then we put the price up to $100 a month. And then we had more people sign up, and I was like, so that's when in my brain, I was like, if I get 100 people giving me $100 a month, or if I get 1,000 people giving me $100 a month, that's $100,000 a month. And I was like, that's like gangster money. That's like,
I can retire on that.
yeah, I can work with that. So I was like, why didn't I think of this beforehand? I'm like, I've been selling my time to all these Shopify store owners where they give me, say, 10 grand, 100 grand, and then I build the thing, and then they have their business and it grows. And some of them have retainers, but I still have to be involved. And then, yeah, it all came to head when I did this really big project for a university in Australia, and me and my team were engulfed for 12 months. That's all we could do for 12 months. We're in meetings all day and we couldn't do anything else. And it was really hard for my developer and myself to do that because we're an agency, but we do heaps of really cool shit. So to just work at one university for 12 months. Yeah. So to do one client for 12 months, it was like working for someone else again. It was like, it wasn't what we wanted to do. Yeah. I was like, what the hell? So I was like, maybe I'm not going to get 1,000 people because I think there's only about 1,500 people in the world that actually have Lightspeed and Klaviyo. But if I can get 100 of those people, that's still really good recurring income. And then I was like, that's if I get them for $100 a month. But if I get like some enterprise people, some B2B people, they're paying really big money. And I'm still super early in this. Like we're under subscribers at the moment. We're actually under 50 subscribers at the moment, but it's growing really fast. I'm getting really good feedback from people and heaps of features all the time. And in my head, I feel like it's got a lifeline, like Klaviyo or Lightspeed will bring an integration out. But in the meantime, I'm going to get so much information, much detail around what customers actually need, because all we're essentially doing is helping people who have bricks and mortar stores send emails to people who come into their shop. Because at the moment, it's a lost space. And people just assume that it goes into Shopify, then it goes into Klaviyo, but it doesn't. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of gaps around loyalty, around reviews, around that kind of stuff. And at the moment, like anyone who signs up to our platform, they're seeing a massive increase straight away because they're getting those conversions from those emails of reviews, come back into store, purchase, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's where it came from. And it's opened my eyes because I went and met with every Klaviyo agency that I could find. And they're like, hey, why aren't you doing an integration for Retail Express? Why aren't you doing an integration for Fair Harbor? Why aren't you doing an integration? So there's all these gaps. And we're just like,
for new store.
Let's nail. Yeah. So I'm like, maybe we should just be like the POS integration guys. Maybe we should just focus on doing integrations only into Klaviyo, like a real niche. Like we only do POS to Klaviyo integrations, and that's our specialty. But yeah, it's to answer the question again from AI. I had a customer sign up the other day, and I'm like, "How'd you find me?" And I was on Claude, and I just asked who's the best Lightspeed integration, and it said Klavx, which is our business, and it said recommended in brackets. And I was like, what? Recommended? Jeez. So then I went out to Klavx to Claude and I said, why did you recommend me? And it said, for this reason. And here's some other reasons you can add to your site to make it even better. And I was like, okay, cool. So yeah, that's how the whole SaaS thing. But yeah, I think I love helping people leave their full-time jobs and backing themselves. But now I'm like super intrigued in how can I help other people do SaaS models as well? Because if you just own a really small niche and you've got even if you've got 100 people giving you, or 1,000 people giving you $100 a month, that's like really good. It could be paying for your kids like Pokemon cards because they cost so much, or it could just be a little side hustle that does stuff for you. But I think everyone have a little space like that, especially with tools like Lovable and like all these AI tools that have come out where people can build stuff without developers. Yeah.
Replit also
Yeah.
playing big in the space. I think it's very cool.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think instead of having 1,000 people working for one company, we're going to have 1,000 people working for 1,000 companies themselves. And I think I think when we look back throughout history, it's a fairly recent phenomenon where companies employed hordes of people as employees. That's a fairly recent cultural phenomenon. Like when we were an agrarian society, it was mostly people trading directly with each other. Maybe there was a marketplace or a bazaar, and maybe they had to pay a small fee to have their stall there, whatever it was. But it was mostly direct trade, right? And we had like spice traders, and we had people traversing the world, bringing things to the world. But it was mostly kind of peer to peer, and it was mostly people doing what they loved or what they were good at, and meeting the market where it was, and saying, "Look, this is what I have to offer the market, and this is what I need to get from the market to survive," right? And so I feel like it's almost like things are starting to come full circle. People are now in a position where they can literally do things that they absolutely love, that they're good at, that actually has a market demand. And with the power of the internet, we can join those three things together quicker than ever before. And with the addition of AI, now instead of having to have 20 developers, maybe we have one, right? With AI superpowers added to that single developer. And so I think it was Sam Altman, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Sam Altman that said recently that we're going to see the world's first billion-dollar company that's run and built by a single person. That there's no team, it's one person, billion-dollar company. That will happen very soon with the advent of AI. And I think it's a super interesting prospect, but where does that put you in terms of Sonder sites, and where does that put you from an agency perspective? Obviously, you're not far along enough with the SaaS platform to replace your agency income and everything else yet, but it may not be that long until it does. It could be 6 to 12 months, and all of a sudden, boom, now maybe you're making more money from SaaS than you are from agency life, and certainly with less hours and less stress, because let's face it, running an agency is stressful. Any kind of client-facing services it's stressful. It's just the way that it is. I've run both agencies, so I get it. But also, you more laterally, you focused on B2B, where you started out, it's okay, we're working with retailers. We're working with retail websites here. But laterally, you started to focus on B2B as well. And what drew you to B2B? Because certainly when I first started my own independent consultancy nearly 5 years ago now, I was like, man, okay, I've got a little bit of a personal brand. Some people know who I am and they know what I'm capable of. But if I go into D2C and B2C consulting, like it's just 100% red ocean. Every agency, consultant, platform, everybody's targeting like the same ICP, right? And it's super competitive. And I was like, I've got this deep skill set in B2B. What if it feels so blue ocean. It feels like there's so few people focusing on it. It feels like this is a massive opportunity. Why don't I double and triple down on that? It was a little bit scary when I did, but in hindsight, I'm super glad that I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope I haven't oversold myself too much in the B2B space, but I'm happy to give you how I got into doing some B2B stuff. Yeah. Doing all the mum and pop stores, retailers, all that kind of stuff. And then without going too much into it, I essentially started a PR company, got investors, essentially lost 600 grand of my own money and some investors' money. And what came from that, I was trying to build virtual reality stores on Shopify. So I was trying to build VR stores when everyone was shut down. I was like, you can still experience the in-store experience. Anyway, yeah. So of that, I got to do this presentation at this university and I got to talk about the future of e-commerce. And I was super lucky putting myself out there. It just happens to be that all of the directors and everyone at that university were there on that night when I was doing this speech. And they came in and they said, "We love what you're doing. Let's talk about a virtual reality store for our university." And I was like, "Sure, let's go." So I went to this big meeting the next week and they're like, we love this idea, Tim, but our current store is not even operating properly. So we can't do that. We can't do anything until we fix that. And I was like, oh, what's it built on? And they're like, it's on Shopify. And I'm like, that's what I do. I do Shopify. So I got in to this university purely from speaking about VR, even though I ended up closing that business down because we ran out of money. And got it in there, started doing some small projects, like just doing like their hoodies and their merch for the university. And then we got the opportunity where they wanted to do their short courses. So the whole university, it's a big university in Australia. They wanted to do their short courses on Shopify, which is unheard of. You don't do education on Shopify, like you don't sell education.
Proper
But
LMS that you put it on.
yeah, so they use like Canvas for their thing, but they wanted to do the e-com side. So the actual selling of the product, and they love the idea of Shopify Plus. And luckily for them, they would get one Shopify Plus license and then have 9 of their brands inside of that. So usually they would need 9 Shopify licenses for that, but I don't know how they get away with it. So we got their Shopify Plus store in there, did their short courses. So me and one developer built alongside their internal team, build their whole short courses RMIT website, working with it's integrated to Workday, Salesforce, and Canvas. And we just did it. It took us 12 months, and that's what I was just talking about. But they're like, we're also super intrigued in the B2B side of things. And the only real B2B experience I had was I had a couple of clients who were using Shopify apps like Gorilla. There's like Gorilla Warehouse, and there's a couple of other ones in that space. And
Gorilla.
Shopify, also
Yeah.
Gorilla, yeah.
And
I'm pretty sure.
player.
Yep. And Wholesale Gorilla always comes up. I've even got one customer in the moment who's deciding between Wholesale Gorilla and Shopify Plus. And they're like, where do we go? Because Shopify Plus is good, but it's only really if you need one feature that you like. It's like you're not going there purely for B2B, especially when you can get away with it using Wholesale Gorilla. So this big universities, we can see Shopify is making some moves in the B2B space. So what are they doing? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's wait for the next editions. And then, yeah, as you said, there's nothing in there, nothing exciting for B2B. And I was already building experience for RMIT in the B2B space, but they're not even really using the Shopify like features for it. Like they're using, I'm not sure of your experience with Shopify's B2B space, but they're using essentially the companies, they're using the catalogs, they're using that. But outside of that, there's heaps of stuff the Shopify Plus B2B features don't have. For subscriptions and email reminders and all that kind of stuff, you have to go outside of it. And it's an interesting space. And I feel like they want to, especially in APAC, like they've got billboards everywhere around Australia saying Shopify B2B. They're really trying to get into that space and take some of that market share. But that's how I essentially I've done some like Wholesale Gorilla ones for smaller customers who want to sell B2B. But for these bigger enterprise universities, they're super intrigued in it because they've invested in Shopify and they're like, how can we do it? So right at the moment, we're building a buy on behalf of a business can come into their online short courses and they can buy a course in AI. Then when they get to the checkout, they've got a custom checkout block where they can buy on behalf of their business. So they put in their company details and then that will go to their business and they can pay for it all and they can go through. So they can have a kind of like a retail experience as a customer, but then it goes to their business and they buy it from the university. So that's an example of how we're doing it at the moment with Shopify. But yeah, I think it's like anything with Shopify. They start doing something and then they just perfect it over time. Like the POS is getting way, way better. There's a lot of people coming across from Lightspeed into Shopify POS.
Yep.
And I don't think they're ever going to take the email space. I feel like Klaviyo owns too much of that, but I also feel like Shopify owns Klaviyo as well. I don't know. But yeah, the B2B one, I think is interesting because they keep talking about it being something that they want to own. But I don't know. Is this another classic case of Lightspeed saying they're going to bring out an integration? Maybe they're saying that externally, but are they actually doing it internally? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think some of the core data primitives have been added to Shopify for B2B. Obviously, the concept of accounts, the concept of price lists, the concept of custom catalogs, the concept of account hierarchies, and there isn't permissions yet, which is a bummer. There isn't yet the ability to easily create bulk carts through the front end UI. There's no CPQ capability, so there's no quote management capability. There's a lot of kind of table stakes, what I would call table stakes stuff with B2B that it doesn't do yet, but core data primitives to be able to build out a lot of that stuff are now in the platform where they never were before. And so I think if this doesn't turn out to just be a side quest, which I hope it doesn't for Shopify, I really hope that it just doesn't fizzle out because they lose interest in things. It was almost like the logistics thing. And with deliver and then spinning it back off again. And oh yes, we're going to be we're going to be a logistics company like Amazon. Oh wait, no, we're not because we can't do that. And yeah, so I'm really praying that it's not just a side quest, but it scuttlebutt around town is that they've spent $1 billion for invested $1 billion already in B2B on Shopify Plus. That's across product and sales, marketing, and everything else. So that's we would hope that with that level of investment, that it's not a side quest, right? That they're probably going to want to see some ROI on that at some stage. So it's a super interesting space, but I love the fact that you have adapted to meet the market where it is. You've developed additional skills where necessary, and you productized something that you saw a gap in the market and you went, hey, why not me? If somebody's got to do it. Why not me?
Yeah. 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 Right, so just touching on that, I know I wanted to say this before when you were talking about people like doing something or like working in their own space. I think people like, because some people are like, oh, I love my job. It's very safe. I get paid. There's nothing I really care about that I want to do. I don't know what my special thing is. I don't know what my niche is. And when I was working into schools with the kids doing the personal training, I always got that with the young boys. They're like, I don't know what I want to be. My mum wants me to be a doctor. Because although a lot of these were like really like expensive schools and there was a lot of pressure from the kids to be someone really successful, right? And I was just this personal trainer. I'm like, I don't know, just do it. I would always come back to the same thing. I'd be like, just do what gives you goosebumps. Because if you do something that gives you goosebumps, that means that you actually love it and you would do it for free. And if you would do it for free, it means you care about it that much that you will do it in a way that anyone else who's doing it for money would never be able to match. So I feel like you probably do the same, Jason. Like you just doing these podcasts will give you goosebumps. Maybe not every single time. Maybe not with my podcast, maybe with other guests. But when you hear a song that like makes you feel something and you get goosebumps from it, I think if you can find that in your work, then it doesn't become work. It just becomes your life and the time that you spend each day. And like I've always said to people, when I'm in a retirement home, I'll still be building e-commerce stores because I love it. I'll do it for free. And that's my magical point. I want to get to a point where I have enough money that I can just build e-commerce stores for people for free. Still, I need money at the moment to pay for my family and stuff. But I want to get to the point where I can just go out into the world and not need to do it. I can just do it as like just a free thing to people. A fun hobby. But that's the thing I would say to people is do the thing that gives you goosebumps because that's the thing you're going to be really successful at. Even if you start off doing it for free, you'll eventually get people paying you for it because you'll be so amazed at it. I know it's away from B2B, but I had to say that because I was like,
I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. And I think also if you do that thing that gives you goosebumps, I think it will see you through the inevitable, really challenging times that will come along. If you're just doing it purely for the money, you're just doing it because, oh, okay, that's where I think the market gap is. So that's the thing I'm going to focus on or whatever. When the tough times come, you're going to be like, bugger this. I don't even enjoy it. I'm not even having fun. Why the hell would I want to keep putting my head in the vice when I don't even like it? Whereas if you're doing something that you love, and I love having these kind of conversations, then I think it also partially depends on how you view what you're doing. So, for example, I view everything as a learning opportunity. And so I'm like, I can't really lose okay, so let's say only 100 people listen to an episode of my podcast. That wasn't the goal. The goal was, can I learn? Can I help somebody else? Can I give someone else a pedestal to stand on that give them an audience to reach out to? And can I ultimately create something that's super interesting and enjoyable for my audience? And when I first started this, one of the reasons why I structured my podcast the way that I did was because when I looked out in the podcast world, there was no one doing the kind of podcast I wanted to listen to. And I was like, if no one's going to do it, why don't I just do it? Then there were lots and lots of e-commerce marketing podcasts that focused on merchant stories and digital marketing. But there were none that were focusing on the technical and operational side of e-commerce. Now, there's a few now, like there's the operators and there's a few others now that focus on the tech and ops side of e-commerce. But when I started, there wasn't. And so I was like, this is the kind of content I want to listen to. And I'm like, shit, if nobody else is going to do it, bugger it, I'll just do it myself. And here we are.
That's awesome. I would love to see in your background, I would love to see an actual sword, like one of your guests to make you an actual proper sword that goes in between the e-commerce edge, like a proper, like maybe like a real one. Yeah.
I love that. And look, I've seen some pretty amazing sword makers on TikTok. You go down that TikTok rabbit hole and it's crazy.
That is amazing. So my last question for you, or not my last question, but it's a question. Who's the best player in the B2B space? If you had a business killing it and you need to change systems to a brand new system, are you going to take a risk and go Shopify Plus, or where are you going to go?
No, look, I wouldn't go Shopify Plus only because depending on the scale that you're at, for most pure B2Bs. Now, if you're just a wholesaler, meaning that you're effectively selling retail products, but in wholesale quantities, or let's say you're a D2C brand and you want to dabble in wholesale volumes, then I think Shopify is perfect for that. But I think for the complex B2B use cases, building products, industrial products, HVAC, electrical, like if you're dealing with hardcore B2B products that are not sold at retail or are sold ultimately into a big box store like a Home Depot or Bunnings or whatever, then I think that the really complex product data, the really complex sales cycles, the really complex use cases that we see in the B2B world, the fact that you have field sales reps and they have to be integrated into the system, and there's just there's and then you have EDI ordering, you have punch out and e-procurement integrations that you usually need to do, and you have just really complex, you have CPQ, you have really, you just, there's so much going on in that real hardcore B2B space that Shopify is just not, they're not even trying. And if you ask them this, I think they'd be open about the fact, no, we're not going after, that's not the space we're going after. We're going after the 50% of our stores that are D2C brands that want to get into wholesale, and they don't want to adopt a whole system to be able to do it. They want to be able to do it on one platform. And that's the kind of low-hanging fruit I think Shopify sees, and that they can win there. They can absolutely win there, and they're already starting to win there. But I think I'll take the typical consultant answer, which is it depends. The thing is, there hasn't yet been the consolidation in the B2B e-com platform space like there has been in the D2C and B2B space. Now it's largely Shopify and WooCommerce have won that game. Like it's a two-horse race on the B2C, D2C side. And if, from a SaaS perspective, there's only one. There's really only Shopify. Whereas in the B2B world, there's 30 really good B2B specific e-com platforms out there. But you're going to see, in my opinion, you're going to see some radical consolidation over the next couple of years. That's not going to last. It's going to consolidate to 4 to 6 maybe major global B2B e-commerce platforms, and then you're going to have maybe 4 or 5 vertical specific B2B e-commerce platforms that are targeted at very specific verticals with very vertical specific capabilities. But also, agentic AI is starting to really disrupt the industry too. And so does the store even matter anymore in an agentic AI world? Not as much as it did. And certainly also in the B2B world, automating manual legacy processes like email orders, WhatsApp orders, Slack orders, and Teams orders, quote requests, stock requests, price requests, all those things that happen through those other channels other than the portal. That stuff is also largely being automated now by a multimodal AI in the B2B world. So it's a super exciting time. That's a long-winded way of copping out and saying I'm not going to tell you a single platform that works in every instance if I was in B2B.
I thought I'd ask because you might be like, these guys are the best, and they're like, absolutely, yeah. But I don't know. I thought you had the answer. I thought there'd be like a split up answer because it is a consulting answer. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that
Yeah.
you think it's going to get down to 4 to 6 of them out of the 30. That'll be interesting to see what happens there. Yeah,
I've
yeah,
just seen this pattern repeat itself over the last 25 years with so many technologies where you start out and it's open slather across a category of software, and then it ends up being 1, 2 to a handful max. There's very rarely in a specific software category do you have 30 winners. It's just so rare. Maybe you'll have some tiny little niche winners. For example, your platform, sure, somebody could go and they could get an iPaaS platform, a Patchworks, a Soligo, whatever, right? They could go and they could get an iPaaS. They could work with an agency or the iPaaS vendor, and they could hook up the kind of thing that you hooked up. But that's a much bigger lift than a single plugin that does a single thing. And so there's
yeah,
always room, I think, in the market for these. I think niching down is a superpower. Let's put it that way. And I've said this
yeah.
before on the podcast. When I niche down, and I've expanded my services in the last couple of years only because I had so many inquiries for it, but it was adjacent to what I was already doing. When I started out, I was only working with B2B sellers, so manufacturers and distributors that were doing between $20 million a year and $500 million a year in GMV. They had to be manufacturers or distributors, and I only worked with, I didn't work with SIs. I didn't work with platform vendors. I didn't work with investors. So it was a really tight little niche that I really pushed myself into. And I think that niching down is a real superpower. And it's hard because it feels like you're eliminating so many other opportunities in the process of niching down. But what I find is it's easier, the tighter the niche, the easier it is to own it. And that's what I've discovered as part of that process of niching down. And then I started getting inquiries from some SIs in the B2B world that wanted me to work with them. Then I started getting some inquiries from some B2B platform vendors. Hey, can you help us? And so, hey, you'll be the first cab off the rank. I'll have to develop some custom consulting frameworks for you guys. If you're willing to put up with that, then hey, look, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And but those are adjacencies. They're still in the B2B world. So it's a super interesting space, but I think you've hit on one of the reasons you have found early success, I think, is because that superpower of niching down. You were able to
Yeah.
go, look, maybe we'll expand at some point, but for now, let's just go after this super tight little space that feels like there's some white space here that no one is touching and no one wants to touch. Because if you're Patchworks or you're Soligo or you're NetSuite or you're Klaviyo or whatever, like you need to go after home runs to move the
Yeah.
needle from a revenue percentage perspective. Whereas for you, you don't need to go. A base hit is good. Like you don't need to have a home run. You just need base hits, and you get 10 base hits, and you're happy. You're home and hose.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
somebody like the Klav, geez, they got to swing for the fences because otherwise it just doesn't mean enough revenue to make the effort. The juice has to be worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
I've heard that from other agencies as well. That we'd love to do this, but we're just too big. Like we can't do these small things. But I also think it's good for the end customer too, right? Because just say there's a Shopify app. I can say to the customer, I can custom develop this. It's going to
Yep.
cost you 10 grand. And then we build it, we hand it over to you, and it's yours. Or you can go with an app. It's going to cost you like $5 a month. But this is all they do. And they're going to understand and they're going to improve it over time. So like with our product, that's all we're doing at the moment. And we have customer support just for that. And that's all we care about. That's all I care about promoting. So it's like, they're going to get a way better service for it. So, and you understand that it's so much sharper and your marketing is sharper and like specific conversations you have are sharper and you're an expert in that niche. Risky, but I think it's worth it. I think it's because there's so many people in the world, right? Like you just got to own that little part of the space you want to own.
Yeah, it's look at Hamish Mackay, Kiwi Boy, order editing. Look at it's an extreme niche, but they own that niche now. They own the conversation around it. And if you're a brand and you want to enable order editing on your Shopify store, there is no one else you would think of.
Yeah. But there's a company that they made 500 grand. So all they did, this is like years ago, they add snow to your Shopify site. So it's like a JavaScript overlay kind of thing. And it's like $1 and you can activate it for a month. But they had all these people, we want snow on our website. And we're like, let's just do the snow. And then all you need is enough people to do it from that Shopify space. And you set and you just repeat it. There's so many little things that people ask for. Like there's a thing that people always ask for. They want to be able to, on Shopify Plus or any Shopify store, they want to be able to give user permissions for just one collection. So yeah, we actually built that for RMIT. So they've got this thing where they can give permissions just for one collection, like t-shirts and for hoodies for 2 different people. Yep. Shopify doesn't allow that because I think the reason they don't allow it is because if they allowed it, then people wouldn't need to have multiple Shopify stores. They could just have one Shopify store and they could expand it and have 100
on Shopify Plus. Restricted catalogs are a thing, like customer specific catalogs are available.
Yeah, for customers, but not for user permissions. So for your internal staff.
I gotcha.
Yeah, for internal staff. We did that. And I'm like, maybe that could be a really good app to put out into the world, but maybe Shopify might not like that. But that could be good for one customer, but it's just owning that. It's like, hey, Tim, what do you do? Oh, I do the user permissions for Shopify internal stuff. I'm that guy. And they'll be like, what? That's quite niche.
They'll be like, we're not even going to go after that. But if it's a need, it's a need. Listen, Tim, this has been fascinating. I would normally, this is where, as we come down to the end of our time together, we've been going for nearly an hour and it's hours flown by. This is where I'd normally turn the microphone over to you, but you've already asked me so many questions. I don't even need to do that. We've already covered some awesome ground, but what I will ask you is, I'll drop your LinkedIn profile into the show notes and your website into the show notes. But other than that, how do you like people to get a hold of you if they want to chat all things e-commerce, Shopify, Klaviyo Lightspeed / POS integration? Where's the best place to find Tim Sullivan?
You can just email me. Email me is fine, like tim@sondersites.com. But I'm always available. So like LinkedIn, just call me on my phone. I'm always on my phone as well, so I have a chat. And if you want to get real personal, add me on Discord. And then again, I like a bit because when I was doing the VR stuff, everyone in that space is a gamer, so everyone was on Discord. And then I really like the Discord platform. It's great. It's not as messy for me. But yeah, if you just want to reach out, like an email's the best way. Yeah,
love it. Absolutely love it, Tim. I really appreciate your time. Can't wait to speak to you again soon. And look, all the best with your platform, your SaaS platform, your agency, everything else. Been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate it. Talk to you again soon, my friend.
Thanks, Jason. See you, mate.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.